I'm Ruth Moman from the Farmington Hills Historic District Commission, and we will be going to visit the historic First Baptist Church of Farmington at Shiawassee and Farmington Roads in the historical district Farmington. The history of the church and the early history of religion in Farmington. Missionaries were sent out from the churches in New York to distribute Bibles and preach in the frontier regions. The missionaries were poorly paid and had to supplement their preaching by establishing farms in the areas. The Baptist church had come to Pontiac in 1822, 2 years before the first settlers came to Farmington. It was a hard trip for settlers who wanted to attend the Baptist service, for it was a 14-mile trip by ox cart over bad roads. 4 years later, in 1826, the Baptists organized their own church in Farmington at the home of Robert Wixom. Because schools were built on the frontier before any other institutions, there was a log school at the corner of the current 12-mile and Halstead roads. There the Baptists gathered and held services. In 1833, the Baptist Home Missionary Society sent out Nehemiah Lamb and his two sons, Caleb and Eraswell. Just a few years later, in 1835, a church was built at Halstead and 12-mile roads. There, a church cemetery was near the church. Because a popular mill at 11-mile and Drake roads had a lot of business, people thought the new village for the area would gather around the mill. The center of the village developed instead at Division Street and Shiawassee Trail, Farmington Roads and Shiawassee. After Nehemiah Lamb and his sons were sent to other communities, attendance at the church dropped off. The Reverend Lambs went to West Bloomfield, Walled Lake, and other communities to organize new churches. The one in Walled Lake that was organized by Caleb Lamb is still there. As the attendance dropped off and there were few people coming to the church at 12-mile and Halstead Road was sold and used as a barn. Pioneers wasted very little. The cemetery became known as the Baptist Burying Ground and is now the historic West Bloomfield Cemetery, a part of the Farmington Hills Historic District. In the village of Farmington, the Baptists reorganized. The Reverend John Rasco was the minister starting in 1857. By 1860, a new church was dedicated. This church has been here ever since. It has been active in Farmington civic affairs. At this time, the Farmington was part of the Underground Railroad that helped escaping slaves reach Canada. The most significant time was 1850, after the fugitive slave law was passed, and it was very dangerous to help these slaves. The church was active in the Underground Railroad from 1850 to 1865. Marked the end of the Civil War. The Baptist church basement was one of the safe places for the escaping slaves. Soon after the church building was built, Reverend Rasco started the Oakland Institute, which might have been an early college, but somehow it just didn't make it. Another activity of the church was starting a library in Farmington. Ladies' literary societies were very popular. The ladies started the first Farmington library right there in the church where they were members. Now we will meet with Bob Erickson, a longtime member of the Baptist Church, who will bring us up to date on the more recent activities in the church and show where some significant events occurred. We will now go to the new sanctuary. We are here in the chapel of the new chapel of the Baptist Church with Robert Erickson,
right,
who has been a member of the church since he was a young boy, and he's going to tell us about some of his adventures here at the church, beginning at Well, when did you first join?
I joined when I was 14. That'd be 1945. I started attending in 1943.
And the old chapel was still here?
The old church, yeah, I was still. I met in that old church, right? The education building was already constructed. We had our Sunday school classes at.
And you had that the raised platform in the old church, and you still were meeting in the old church?
Right, meeting in the old church. That's the reason they ended up building this new auditorium, because they had to have two services. And I remember I showed you, Ruth, how they had to cut a hole through the wall in the old sanctuary, and in part of the educational unit, they had seats out there for people to sit. And on the west wall, they had to cut away part of the old sanctuary to have access to another room for people to sit. And it just got to be too many people, so God laid on the heart of the people to build this auditorium, which they did for $192,000. They raised the money to build this auditorium right here. And
the members built most of this themselves?
No, this was all built by a contractor, Christian contractor. Although members of the church were allowed to come and do some of the manual labor here to save on some of the cost. But in the old education unit, I was telling you that some of the members were involved in that, and one fell from the rafters into the basement and was killed in the process of doing that. There's a sad story with that. Yes. But that was prior to me coming to the church. You know.
And now you had special kind of heating in the church, the early heating you were telling me about.
Yes, in the old education unit, everything was coal-fired. Even the new education unit was coal-fired. And I was telling you, Ruth, about the old, they call it the old octopus-type heaters, gravity, big, huge pipes that carry the heat up to the rooms by gravity, and the cold air would come back down the pipes and reheat it again. And that was all coal-fired. So that you had to have somebody come in and stoke the fires, you know. And I believe the woman that was in charge of the stoking the coal fire furnace in the auditorium, I'm not sure she was a member of the church, but she was she was a custodial of that part of it. And I know sometimes that she would come in right during the middle of the service, and she had to rack those levers back and forth to get the coal clinkers to go down. So that kind of interrupted the service with that until you got finished racking the coal back and the clinkers out of the thing, and restoke again. But between the old education and the old auditorium, there was two concrete strips that the trucks would back up into and to unload the coal in those chutes there. And actually, our church bus would back up in there too and let the kids out for the education unit. But we parked all in front of the church. There's no parking. We had no parking facilities behind the church. It was all out in front. That they had, it was this gravel, gravel in front of the church there.
And you had your car parked out there one time? What happened to it?
Yes, that was a funny instance. I had a 1929 Ford, but I made a real step up. I got a 1937 Ford, and I pulled in front of the church. I came down Shiawassee, going west down Shiawassee, pulled in the parking in front of the church. And one of the deacons came up right in the middle of the service and says, Bob, he says, your car is going down the street. I says, you're kidding, of course. And he said, no, I'm serious. Your car's going down the street. So I got up and walked up, and my car, I used to throw it in reverse. It was an old car, and I wouldn't dare pull the emergency brake on it because it probably freeze up. And it left in reverse, and somehow the starter stuck on it right in the middle of the service and started going down the street on the battery. By the time I caught up to halfway down Shiawassee, before I got to the hill, the batteries were pretty well running down. It was getting kind of sick there. But that was kind of a funny experience. I never expected that. Yeah.
And then they built the parking lots when they built the.
When they built this auditorium here, well, they had a house here, and we met for a short time. Our class, the Sunday school class, met in this house right where the sanctuary is built right now. We met for a short time, and they finally tore it down. Actually, we didn't tear it down. We gave the house to a fellow, and he tore it down board by board, piece by piece, and then carried it all off. And then they started the excavation here, the building for this auditorium right here.
Do you know where he took it?
I have no idea where he took it, whether he rebuilt the thing again or not. It was not the historical building like the old Carpenter House, which was west of here. We ended up buying that off the Carpenter family, and we dedicated that to Historical Society, but they wanted all the property to go with it, and we wanted the property. That was a big thing, expansion for parking and things of that sort. And so the building finally got disrepaired, and it was condemned by the Farmington Hills, Farmington City, and we had to have it get torn down. And
that's a shame, but
yeah,
these
it was
things
one
happen.
of the oldest houses in Farmington. And you notice the bronze plaque, of course. It was dedicated and put out in front of the church on the history of the church.
Very, very good. And then you did a lot of work with the Boy Scouts too.
Yes. The church paid for my, in 1950, the church paid to send me to the Valley Forge for the Boy Scout Jamboree. And I was the assistant scoutmaster there. And my dad, prior to that, was scoutmaster. The Children's Hospital, which is now the Botsford Manor, that used to be the Children's Hospital. I was the assistant scoutmaster there. And we used to take the kids out on their property once a year, and they couldn't. We took them camping. We had tents set up, and the nurses would wheel them out in wheelchairs and carts, and we'd take them out camping, and they'd be around the campfire, circle around the campfire, and play games, and whatever games they could, by laying on carts and that. And that was their camping out, and I felt it was a really worthwhile thing.
Oh, you did some wonderful things.
Yeah, and Pontiac, it was nice. Pontiac paper took a picture of me. I still have the photograph. It was in the paper, me and the scoutmaster there.
And in the meantime, they were increasing the church and building onto it.
Yes, I retired from Ford Motor Company in 1994, in January. From then on, I took on a project. Me and my wife and Hugh Thompson and his wife, Donna, and we end up taking over all the older part of the building, the old sanctuary and the old education unit, and restored that. And it was so much, we got a lot of enthusiasm. People said, hey, I'll get part of this. So we actually had a huge group of church members spend a lot of their time, and we remodeled. I think we got there was $25,000 given to us for expenses, and we remodeled from the place where you go through from this new auditorium to the old sanctuary and the old education unit. All that has been remodeled back then, because it got in disrepair, things that damages don't get fixed nowadays. So we just did a whole thing, and so it's what you see right now is a finished product.
With all the wonderful little classrooms and a place for the children.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When they have the services, they keep the children in the
Well,
Sunday
actually,
school?
we have nurseries, a baby nursery and a toddler nursery. And years ago, in the old educational unit, we'd have banquets there for the members of the church. And we actually, back in those days, we used the kitchen and cook food and things of that sort. Later on, when we moved in this new sanctuary, we divided the old sanctuary up in half and put a drop ceiling in it. And we made that part a toddler room and part nursery. In fact, I didn't point out to you, but there's that one wall, there's actually a glass in there with a Venetian blinds. You can look into from one room to the other and see what's going on, And that's been, since that time, the nurseries have been moved. A lot of things have happened, but that was the original concept,
Well, I noticed the choir, they have pictures of the choir out in the snow, the gals with their shoes. I don't know how they ever
that's
did
a dedication. A dedication for this groundbreaking, the start of this new part here. Yeah, after the guy tore the house down, we had the groundbreaking.
And
In 1956, I believe it is, that's when they dedicated this part here,
And they put in the parking lots.
Yes, there was a parking lot. And of course, after we got the Carpenter property, we extended that parking lot down farther west into the edge of the parking lot lane. Yeah.
So it made a very, very unique church and a lovely church lasting.
Yes, yeah. The church has a lot of rich history. In the old sanctuary, I understand that they used to raise money to help support the pastor. They'd have they serve meals to the members of the community. And when they built that bell tower in 1900, they took the bell that was on the original structure on the sanctuary, moved it to the side, built the tower, and they had a little part behind it where they actually had a kitchen. They would serve food for the community, sell food for the community. And then eventually they, I don't know if they took it off, but they made a room there, divided the room and made it for a dressing room for baptismal, and also for the choir to put on their robes to come up on the platform for singing. And I was involved in that myself, yes.
Is the bell still up there?
Well, the bell, so the original bell, still there, the original Farmington bell.
Do they ever
ring it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, every Sunday. They ring it every Sunday, yeah. Hugh Thompson's our official bell ringer. I think he's first ding-a-ling, I call him. Yeah, official ding-a-ling, yeah. But he's been ringing the bell. In fact, when we had the anniversary of 9/11, they asked, the Farmington community asked us to ring the bell for, I think, a half an hour. And he came up and rang that bell for half an hour.
All the churches ring the bell at the same time?
All the churches rang the bell at the same time, right. Absolutely.
This was Shiawassee and Farmington Road. They just have churches along here every few feet.
Yeah, it seemed like a...
Yeah, in competition with each other, of
Well,
course.
you see how the old pictures back there where they actually had wooden planks to walk on to get back to the church because there was no sidewalks and just nothing but dirt roads to get back. They had hitching rails. The farmers used to tie their horses and their carriages up to. And that's the reason they actually built this church, because they go to Pontiac Church. It was a 15-mile drive for them. That's a long time to take their horses and carriages to go to church. So they decided they built a community here, you know.
That was 1821, and they were before they started church
in Pontiac. Yeah, 1926 they met first off in a little home, somebody's home here, and then they went to a log cabin schoolhouse at Haggerty and Halstead. Halstead and 12 Mile, excuse me, Halstead and 12 Mile. And they met there for a while. But then they decided to build a sanctuary up on, well, right now it's the old cemetery, Farmington Cemetery, on the top of the hill, and they had the services there.
That was when Nehemiah Lamb and his two sons were there.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it.
And Caleb, and I see that they were early ministers of your church.
Right, there you go.
They they moved the church. It was in 1857, I believe.
Right, 1857 is when we built this new the education for. It was 28 by 43 feet, I believe. The original sanctuary is, and they built that for. It cost them $2,800 to have that build that building.
That was big money in those days.
Yeah, remember we've had that inspected by the Corps of Engineers and see if it's a sound building still. Well, remember I showed you down there, it's all hewed timber, that's, the wood is notched together with pegs and stuff like that. They said it's still very sound. We have a little history about that when their baptismal tank was just they cut a hole in the floor and put a copper tank in the floor, and they baptized, and they take the cover off and baptize people in it. Well, one day they took the cover off and the copper tank was gone. I guess copper was pretty expensive back then because somebody stole the tank.
Oh,
but they used the Methodist church. They had one on Grand River. Had a fire in their church, and so they used our facilities for a while.
That was 1929. Somebody was telling me that they were here, and it was 1929 that the church burned.
The Methodist church?
Methodist church.
Yeah, they used our facility for a couple of years, I believe. They got those themselves
they
back on their feet.
cooperated with each other. It's
right,
wonderful.
Yeah, right, we did. And then finally, Albert McDonald, who was an architect, he drew up the plans for a concrete baptismal tank. And right to this day, it's still there. In fact, that was the tank I was baptized in. That was the addition. You'll see you walk behind the church, you'll see a little back door, and that's the back door goes to that baptismal tank. And that's the same rooms that we used for the dressing rooms is what we would get their, for the baptismal, put on our clothing and go up to be baptized, change their clothing.
And I noticed your father was involved.
Yes, my dad was a lifetime deacon, and one of the pictures you saw of the inside this building, a pew back there in the back corner, and my dad was standing there. He was a lifetime deacon. He was one that read the scriptures at the groundbreaking. He went to be with the Lord in 2006, and he was almost 101 years old.
Wow.
In February, December 20th he died. In February he would have been 101. And my mother died a year later, and she would have been 100 in April. She died December 30th, a year later,
Was your mother involved in the church too?
Oh yes, my mother's involved. She was treasurer of the church. She's very active in the church. Everybody was active. Actually, my sister and I started at this church, came by ourselves. We lived at 8 Mile in Farmington Road. We could just hike it down here or else get a ride down for the church service. And a short time later, just within a year or so, about a year later, my dad joined the church, and he was very, very active from then on. And everything I did, he got involved with it. He was a great guy. And of course, my mother couldn't get in the Scouts and that, but my dad was in the Scouts with me, and we did a lot of things together, So it was a great time.
It's wonderful the church was supporting the Scouts. It's great.
Yes, Troop 35, and they had 2 Girl Scout troops, 2 Girl Scouts troops, and they got so big they end up having another ex-church or somebody take over one of the parts of it, that I forget what, Troop 7, I think, was the Girl Scout troop, if I remember correctly. So that was a big thing in this. But our Scouts was huge. We did a lot of, I showed some pictures of the paper drive. We'd go out and raise money by going and picking up papers and take them over to Pontiac with our trailers, for raising money for the Scouts. It was some good projects,
Supporting the pastor and supporting the Scouts, you do an awful lot of things.
Yeah, there was a lot of activities going on, yeah. We had a great time, yeah.
Well, if we go back in the history, that you sheltered slaves here, and you had the first library was here. Right.
Actually, the Farmington Library was here in the church, and we had the books for a long time. We had some back in the educational unit there. We had all the shelves with all the Farmington libraries and books, and when you open up, it had a stamp at Farmington Library. And they must have had somebody was in charge to hand them out, and make sure they get back in time and all that stuff.
It was the Ladies' Literary Society. They had various literary societies.
Oh, did they?
And you had a pastor by the name of Roscoe. And he started a institute. It almost developed into a college, but it didn't. They didn't grant degrees.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
That goes way back before the turn of the century. They were very much involved with the literary things. Young people and old people, they were telling me about it.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's well before your time.
Yeah, right.
That's the history that they were kind enough to tell me about.
For 1931, I can't help you out on it. All I can do is just what's been told me, and reading some of the old literature, find out some of the stuff,
Yeah, well, I wasn't there either. This is somebody else told me.
Right. Yeah, right.
And I hope I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's where the library got started, right here in your church.
Yeah. And of course, after we dedicated and moved into this auditorium here, the old auditorium was divided in half, and they made it in the nursery, part of the nursery, another in the classroom. And the old platform area was a partition went across that, and they made that into the church library, so people could take out tapes and books and that for the use for, and then return the books back. So that was our library there.
Yeah, well, they had moved the other library out into the city
library,
hall.
They actually gave those books away. If anybody wanted the books, give them away. Just get rid of all the books. We had this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these old books. And it didn't revert back to anybody. Just they wanted to get rid of them, and so everybody had an opportunity to go back and grab. I think a maximum of 5 books
That was out of your library.
That was probably out of our library, but the school library, I don't know the Farmington High School library, I don't know where those books went to.
Well, they went over to City Hall.
Did they? Okay.
I understood it.
Okay. And did the racks go with them to those glass-covered things? I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't either. All of a sudden they were gone, so I just assumed that they just gave them away, but that's what happened. That's good. I'd hate to see this old piece of history like that thrown away, you know.
The very beginning of our library was here.
There you go, yeah. That really is something.
Going way, way back, the Civil War times, they supposedly, all along this road here, it's reported that they sheltered people when they needed to be sheltered.
Yeah, well, of course, that's part of the Farmington history, that our church is part of the Underground Railroad. I don't know if there's nothing in our history books tell you about that, but...
yeah, well, that's what they claim in that tunnel that I'm not sure we could photograph it all.
It's a real challenge to take the equipment down there and photograph that stuff, you know.
I doubt whether they could do it, but it's under there with the great big stones foundation.
Yeah, Michigan Foundation, yeah. Stones and mortar, yeah.
But those are bigger than I've seen in any of the houses. They were much larger stones that they used.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where they got them from. That's where that came from. But that was interesting, that the construction of it and the old beams and stuff like that. I have in the bell tower area, when we modernized the thing, we tore the old wet plaster off of it and got back, and those beams are most like in house studs, are 2 by 4. You know, these are probably about 3 inches wide. By 3 by, I'd say, maybe 10 or 12 inches, huge beams that support all the walls in the old sanctuary and in the bell tower area. Well, when they dug the foundation for this building right close to the old bell tower, it kind of underground the footing of that stone foundation, and the bell tower started leaning. So when we did the reconstruction again, we had to get some huge beams and slice into those big studs and put big, heavy beams to help to support the tower. That's what we call it, the Leaning Tower of Farmington, you know, there. Because it's definitely sagging a little bit over the years, getting more and more, you know, over there, you know.
I can't quite see the lean.
Yeah, well, you go down come towards north on Farmington Road, you'll see a slight lean to the tower, you know. Yeah, you'll notice it. Now I made you conscious of it. But that's the original bell up there, you know. That bell's been lasting ever since 1856, when I think that one was originally put up there. Same old bell, you know.
Now everybody's going to know you have a leaning tower.
Yeah, everybody's going to know it's the Leaning Tower of Farmington. Everybody in Pisa, Leaning Tower of Farmington.
Thank you so much, and really enjoyed all the history here. And thank you to the church for letting us come in and take pictures of all these things that are so much a part of our Farmington history.
Well, Ruth, it's a pleasure to present our church to you, and some of the things that went on here. And it's so pleasure of mine to meet you and be part of this meeting.
Thank you.